Welcome to Art and Object's 50th catalogue. This is, of course, Important Paintings in Contemporary Art, our final major art sale for 2011, and we've assembled a really interesting catalogue here. All of the items will be on view at 3 Abbey Street in Newton here in Auckland this coming weekend from 11 till 4. Now the auction, this auction is this coming Tuesday, the 22nd of November at 6:30 p.m. and Ben Plumbly and myself are now going to discuss some of the interesting works in this catalogue.
Jae-Hoon Lee, who works principally in the mediums of video and digitally collaged photos. This is his large-scale photograph, and it is, as you will see, a very large-scale photograph. It's entitled Hotere. I think when you see it initially, you realise that you're looking at something which has been digitally manipulated. The first thing that sort of struck me about looking at it was I realised that the part of it that Western art history has trained us through receding perspective to be the furthest away from the eye is this area in the rear. But in fact, it's larger and closer and more in perspective than this area at the front. And that sort of tips the balance for you visually and sucks you into the composition.
When we consider New Zealand painting, one of the themes that emerges throughout our art history is the specificity of place. And what that means is that many artists are uniquely linked to certain parts, certain terrains, topographies, histories of place in New Zealand. Peter Siddell is a little bit different. We think of Peter Siddell in the context of Auckland, but not its wild, empty spaces, not its elemental areas, but of the built form. And Peter Siddell, for 40 years, has made an emblem of the villa on the Auckland foreshore. This work, Hydrangeas, is so typical of Siddell's work. What we see is these elegant, lovely Victorian villas, the foreshore, the emblematic volcanoes of Auckland, and there, just down the gully, the Hydrangeas. It's almost an ideal Auckland, the Auckland of the past, the colonial past. There are many themes that rise to the surface in Siddell's work. This is really a classic piece, beautifully painted and instantly recognisable for both fans of Siddell's work and Aucklanders. As the world mourns the recent death of Apple founder Steve Jobs, it's an apposite time to be looking at this work, Apple 2000, by Ricky Swallow. Ricky Swallow is a young Australian artist who has really become a sensation in the art world in the last 15 years. This sculpture, like many of Swallow's works, including the great work Killing Time, is a meditation on mortality. Many of you will have seen his iMan sculptures, which is a reworking of the iMac computer with the human skull. And that is a theme that occurs again and again in the work of Ricky Swallow. Questions of mortality, history, aging even. And I think that this is a great time to be looking at this work again when we consider the legacy of Steve Jobs and of course the future of this increasingly cyber world that we live in. I think one of the fascinating stories of New Zealand art history is how modernism developed in New Zealand almost in isolation. And one of the pioneers of New Zealand painting in the middle of the 20th century is without question Rita Angus. And here we have a portrait of her brother Ellen from 1946. And with that clarity and perspicacity that is unique to Rita Angus, she explores not, of course, just the visage, the physical presentation, that classic 1940s haircut of her brother Ellen, but also his psychological state. 1946 is only a year after the end of World War II. So we see Alan Angus here, I think, in his khaki military jacket, and there is an air of uncertainty, introspection. What does the future hold? So the uncertainties of this time are writ large on Alan Angus's face.
Anchoring this main back wall in the gallery is this other incredibly advanced and sophisticated piece of abstraction, this one by Ralph Hotere, obviously. It's entitled Black Painting. It's from 1969. The incorporation of text into Hotere's paintings is something that's been talked about a lot, along with McCaon, of course. He has done an extensive amount of work with New Zealand poetry, people like Hotere, and in this instance with Bill Manhire. And what he does here is he creates a visual equivalent for Bill Manhire's Melody poem. And he does so through the stenciling of text around the periphery, the border of the composition, and then up through the centre. It's disrupted by this thinly inscribed circle right on the middle. It is black on black on black. It is so brilliantly painted that nowhere on this canvas can you find the trace of a human hand. There's been a great deal said about Walters over the years, and but one of the things that I respond to in his work, which I think marks him out as one of our 2 or 3 most important artists, is the manner in which he never put anything out into public discourse. He never released anything into the art world unless he was 100% happy with it. He was absolutely fastidious, meticulous. He had a style of working in which effectively he would start with a paper collage or a paper cutout, and from there he would develop it into a work on paper, which we have frequently in our catalogues, and then finally, if he was happy with both of those, he would convert them into a fully realised painting. These fully realised paintings are very rare. The major Koru works, they hardly ever come up for sale. Most of them are locked away in public institutions. This one from 1980 is an absolute beauty. It's entitled Apu. In some of Walter's works, he would effectively take the stripes around the side of the stretcher bar, really to emphasise the painting's objecthood, its place of standing in the world. But on this one, the composition terminates where the field terminates. And this again adds to its elegance, its charm. If we were playing the what would I grab if my house was on fire, or what would I grab if my auction house was on fire, I think I'd definitely reach for this work. It's a wonderful little McCaon, and of course I used the word little accurately there. It's under 300 by 200, as all the works are from this series, which are entitled Truth from King Country Load-Bearing Structures. The thing that I love about this work is the intimacy of it, and you only really get that with small works. McCaon obviously known for his huge mural scale paintings, tackling existential great themes of life and existence and its broader meaning. This painting has all this, but it has it almost in a miniature scale, at just under 300 by 200. It really is a lovely little gem. You get up close to it and it just gets better and better. The painting style, the brushstrokes, it's so beautifully painted. It's this beautiful inscription on the back. Truth from the King Country, Load-Bearing Structures, #1, Colin McCahon, 78. Acrylic. For me, it really shows that masterpieces don't always have to be big.
At the turn of the 21st century, we see quite a distinct change in Bill Hammond's work, and this is a classic example of that transition. This work, Boulder Bay from 2002, is lighter, is airier, almost dreamy, optimistic and serene. The palette is lighter. This is obviously a daytime scene. And what we see here is the interaction between the waiting figures, and they are accompanied by their doppelgangers, by their spiritual doubles, by perhaps their unconscious selves. We have the hierarchy of the birds observing this dance, this aerial gymnastics which is taking place by these curious figures, these anthropomorphic figures, which are some of the most, shall we say, pushed of Hammond's figures. Many commentators have noted the influence of 15th and 16th century Gothic work, the northern European work of artists such as Hieronymus Bosch and Peter Bruegel. I believe there's another European tradition which informs these, and that is the fête champêtre, the display of harmony in the environment that we see in artists such as Watteau from the late 19th century, even Poussin, the French painter. A divine order is somehow being overlaid on the chaos of the earthly realm. And I think it's to this sense of harmony and a wider reality that Hammond is alluding to in a painting such as Boulder Bay 2, where the effect is not one of dread or doubt, but is one of serenity and certainty.
There's 3 works in this catalogue by Colin McCahon. This work here from 1955, entitled Cowrie Trees, is part of a larger body of work that the artist produced when he initially moved from the South Island to Auckland to take up a position at Auckland Art Gallery. He moved his family out to Titirangi and was immediately affected by the difference in the environment that he encountered, the heat, the warmth, the wet, the flora, the fauna, and immediately set to producing a couple of bodies of work, which I think are among his most successful landscape-based works. This one here, for me, is particularly interesting. It's entitled Kauri Trees, but the really interesting thing about this body of work that he produced in this time, leading up to the 1950s when he went into the Elias works, the French Bay and Kauri Tree works, they're all rooted in the land, as I've said, but fundamentally, all of them, as far as I'm aware, except this one, are horizontal in format. So they take that essential landscape format, thus the reference to land is made explicit. This one's particularly interesting in that he turns the work round and uses a vertical orientation, thus making essentially a modernist composition. A big step away from the land. It still features these wonderful interlocking planes, which also recall the work of Pierre Mondrian, the Dutch abstractionist, of course, but also closer to home, Milan Merkazic's wonderful works entitled City Lights from around the same period, produced contemporaneously. And that's a wonderful little chapter in art history with both McCaon and Merkazic working apart but producing very similar and equally interesting bodies of work.